It's on or about 7 p.m., and the first item on council's agenda tonight is a public hearing regarding the rezoning of the landmark properties on Kurt Street from an M manufacturing zone to an R3 multiple house zone. Public hearings require that anyone in the audience please sign the sign-up sheet that is going around, and anyone wishing to address council regarding this change of zoning, please come to the lectern. I am not too surprised. Many public hearings do not have a lot of people that wish to speak to them. Please come forward.
My name is Chris Paul. If it's rezoned to R3, how does that affect the requirements to have businesses in the first floor?
Really, public hearings are a time that we get
Right.
comments
Well,
from
I
the
think
audience.
that's an issue that a lot of the neighborhood is. I'm a co-chair of NINA.
Yes.
And there is an issue, because since Bob's died, we have all been very sad. And we would encourage anybody, and I know that Brett Hayes has been very good about listening to neighborhood concerns, about making sure that there is commercial property within the thing, because that will make the whole thing just much more vibrant. And I think that's what we want for Stimson Avenue, is a vibrancy that helps it retain the commercial. We don't want it to turn into fully just apartment complexes. We want that commercial viability, and I think they can feed off each other. So I think that's something that council needs to really push and to make sure happens. And if we can have something like Bob's or things like that, that would help everybody, not only people live there. So, and that's what I've gotten from all the NINA people in my neighborhood. And so that's kind of coming from the Near East Side Neighborhood Association. So.
Christine, thank you. Yes, Mr. Weil.
I've also heard this from the Anna group as well. I guess everybody misses Bob's a lot. At the same time, I guess the only question I might have for the developers is, where are you in the plans right now? Are we at the preliminary plat?
Well, it is a public hearing. I don't know if any of the people that have an interest in this would like to speak to it, but maybe if you would like to come up, no? Again, it's an opportunity for citizens to give us the input, just like Christine did.
Okay.
But
I'm not sure even what, we're not ready to vote on it.
No.
It's not out of
This
planning
is
commission.
rezoning only.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking a PUD that will probably be developed on the rezoned land once it's rezoned.
Yes.
And I guess really tonight, what we're here to talk about is the value of that land being still in a manufacturing zone as opposed to being a high-density housing zone.
I'm aware of that. I'm also aware of the fact that I remember the mayor lamenting we don't have many manufacturing zones in the city. I'm also aware that the Mill Street plan actually says that we could use that should be an R3 zone. So therefore, there's two different aspects to this. That's why I'm bringing it up. I just don't know where we are in the process.
Yeah. And Paul, I wish I could answer. I don't know either.
Okay. That makes both of us.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council on the rezoning of the landmark properties? Member Bain, you're a slight late arrival. Is there anything you wish to speak to regarding this? Seeing no one, this public hearing is adjourned.
There we go.
We'll be back at 7:30 with a meeting of City Council. Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, October 16th, 2006. City Council is meeting in regular session. It is on or about 7:30 p.m. We do have a quorum with all members of council present. Are there any communications anyone would like to share? Member Weil.
Two communications, actually many, but that's a thing we're going to be covering later. Thank you for all your emails and calls. Seriously. At the same time, I've got an email from David Deagle about the code enforcement, landlord, tenant stuff, which I will bring up when we have the regular committee meeting on that. The other one I passed to the city council members is from John Sposforth concerning a mural proposal for this Schaefer Street wall. He asked me to relay to all council members and pass it to the Arts Commission. I'll get you a copy, Rick, when I unjam the copy machine, which I just jammed up 5 minutes ago. Because he also talks about other laws, and stuff like that. So I'll get it to you. Okay.
I would also share Member Weil's appreciation of all the comments and letters on both sides of the issue of Ordinance 5906 that we'll be addressing in a few minutes. Too numerous to share with everybody, but from both sides of that issue. Reports and communications from other elected officials. Tonight we have our treasurer, Mary Ann McClure.
Thanks, Bill. I wanted to just make a couple of comments about the interest income report that you all should have a copy of, that I sent to Debbie this morning. It shows the January through September by month as well as the accumulated, and just the main thing I wanted to point out is that the year-to-date, at the end of September, the 266,000 plus, we have already exceeded the 2006 projections, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your spreadsheet, 243,000 plus. We should be at about 350 by the end of the year. And our CD rates have gone from 2.99 at the beginning, we're now up to 5, so a little bit better potential for earnings. Did anybody have any questions for me?
Member Weil.
So the rate, I'm looking for the rates. Are they on here?
No, they're
Okay,
not,
that's
sorry.
fine. Okay.
No,
That's okay.
no, that was just my
wondering.
added comment, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
2.99 was it?
That was at the beginning of the year, and the one I just renewed was at 5.0.
Okay.
Any other comments for the treasurer? Thank you, Mary Ann. Mayor Abel.
I wanted to update council on one of the projects we talked about earlier in committee. The WODA Group, who has purchased the land adjacent to the State Highway Patrol, and we had some discussions about the extension of sewer services to that area. And my own and council's reaction was we'd like to have water and sewer and annexation. They met with me this morning. They have received a release from the Water Authority of Tupper's Plains to turn that to the city in exchange for a cross connection, so that if their wells go out or their water pump is not good, they could get it, or conversely we could. So they were back in to talk to me. We're in the stage of trying to get the development agreement together. This would be 50 apartment units in one building, 3 stories. They're talking about this is a qualified housing under the Ohio Housing Finance Board. This is be for age 55 and above. They would have to meet an income allowance and then get some degree of subsidized housing, but it's not a low and moderate income. You have to be above the low and moderate income category, but within 60% of the average wage. And I'll have all the details for you if you want to schedule either. I'm not sure if it's in planning and development or if it's in services. It's sort of joint because it would be an extension of water and sewer lines along with the development agreement. So we were working on getting those details this week, but I wanted to alert you to that's been revived project for us. Any questions?
I'm sorry, where is this again?
It's adjacent to the State Highway Patrol on East State Street.
It's on East State.
Yes. Yes, Bob.
I'm not clear of it either. So it's east to west of the Highway Patrol or on the same plat? area or same what is it, flat area or something?
It's not real flat. It's about 53 acres of a lot of hill, but there's enough flat area there to do it. But it's just past the city boundaries as you would head towards Stroud's Run or Coolville on the left-hand side of the road.
Okay, and there's adequate pressure for all that stuff, I think, right?
Well, that's where we're looking at what their plans will be. Their engineer was in to talk to Nick Carr today, and others we're going to meet with Steve Pearson. But we have a 10-inch water line coming out of the Hope Drive reservoir that I think terminates around the Pepsi plant. So it would be maybe to get to that. There is I think an 8-inch water line that goes out to the hotel. But preliminarily, what they were talking about was running both the sewer and water in the city's right-of-way on Della Drive and then parallel to East State Street and bypass the lift station at Hope Drive and go gravity. It would make about a 4,000-foot sewer line or water line, but it would avoid the problems of, first they'd hit the 10-inch water line, they'd avoid any pressure problems, and they would also avoid any sewage capacity in any of the grinder lift stations through that area. So that's what their current engineering plans are. But that's what we're trying to finalize this week, and if we can get it into the format, by Friday, that we have a rough draft of the development agreement, I'll have that available for council Monday night. Yes, Nancy?
I was wondering if we can assume this building will be sprinkled?
Yes, I asked them that question. They said they believe it would be sprinkled.
Thank you.
Other questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you. City Auditor Kathy Hecht.
No report.
Law Director Gary Hunter.
No report, Mr. President.
Okay. Before we go on to ordinances for third reading, there are quite a few people here tonight, which I think it's safe to assume is very interested in our first ordinance on the agenda. At last reading, I did not enforce council's rule that people limit their comments to 3 minutes. We do, occasionally that's been done at second reading just to allow for people to make points. I can't imagine that there are very many points that you can bring before a council member tonight that they have not already heard and probably considered. So tonight we will be enforcing the 3-minute rule. As you do come up, the green light will start. When it goes to orange, you need to think about wrapping up. And when the red light on the lectern comes on, your 3-minute allocation has been met. So we will ask that you try to keep to council's rules tonight. Ordinance 5906, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Divisions of Parks and Recreation for ownership of Stroud's Run Park. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, it is my honor and privilege to bring 5906 to council for the final vote. I would like to make a few comments to address some questions that have arisen during the discussion, and then, of course, there will be time for people to speak from the public. Many people have been asking, has there been an environmental study done? And the answer to that question is yes, there has.
Member Patterson, move to adopt.
That would be a good idea. Mr. President, I move to adopt 5906. And so, yes, a little over a year ago, an environmental study was done for the task force. It was done by DNR engineers, and they did a great deal of research and presented an approximately 100-page report to the committee, and they recommended that the city continue with the possibility of taking over that property. The second point that I wanted to make was that nobody was second-guessing an election or even anticipating an election at the time that this first came up. It is an issue that's been being researched for 2 years. And so it certainly was not looking at particular political candidates. And the actual concern would be more on the part of the legislative bodies and the budgeting and decisions that the legislature might make and has considered in the past concerning environmental concerns at Stroud's Run or other state properties. We certainly have seen in the past legislation brought forward for timbering, for oil drilling, for natural gas drilling, for strip mining in public parks, public forests. It has occurred in some of them, and that was the concern of the committee. There is actual legislation along that line that has been tied up in committee for over a year. The issue is whether or not to accept the deed, and I make the distinction that this is deeded property, not annexed property. So the city police department, for example, is not responsible for annexed property. It would be the county police. The same with the roads. They are county roads. They would not become city roads. And so the handling of those particular issues would not change at all. The city would establish policies to govern and manage the lake and the land. And that puts into our local values what we want in terms of how that park might be run. We've discussed a great deal about the budget. Could a future council ask for more money? Future council could do just about anything, and we don't have any control over what future bodies in the city will or will not choose to do. But what we are saying at this time is that the park could be maintained in a similar way for $30,000 or less if revenue came in that we really have not anticipated. I've talked to a number of people, both in favor of this issue and against. Many people are very nervous that they are going to be taxed to support the park. I think that's the number one thing that I've heard. Well, I don't want to pay taxes to support this park. The budgets that have been examined thus far do not bring forward any suggestion of additional fees or taxes in order to run the park. One of the things that we can offer that the state cannot is the partnerships that have come forward. And a part of that is the task force itself, which has put in countless hours and great passion in looking at the feasibility of this park, and the efforts that those people have put forward is truly appreciated by the city. Along with an effort like this that shows what our community can bring forward when these people, 14 people, got together weekly for well over a year to research, to discuss, to talk to the state, and to examine all aspects of this issue. We also have partners in terms of bike trails, hiking trails, the OU colleges, including recreation, arts and science, and health and human services, the bridle path, horsemen, the gun range. These are all things that groups have come forward and said that they are interested in managing those aspects if the city indeed were to gain the access or the deeds for the park. A couple little things that I discovered in looking over things for this vote. The park has only belonged to the state since 1950. It isn't something that, has always been state property. As a matter of fact, it was a little after that. And Dr. Dow from Ohio University began an effort to buy the land surrounding Stroud's Run to form the Athens Forest. And that's what it was first. And Dr. Dow also, along with some of his assistants, were responsible for the development of an agency, the ODNR. And so that was really the beginning of the Department of Natural Resources, and how Stroud's Run came to be under that particular department. I just found that interesting. Thought you'd like to know. Would the state continue to keep the park at the level that it now is? We don't know that. I'm not going to second guess whether they would increase spending, decrease spending, drill for oil, strip mine, any of the above. But those are some of the reasons that this was considered to begin with. In the process of discussing our community goals in the comprehensive plan, time and time again, we heard that we did not want development in our pristine hillsides, and that we value very highly green space and open space. These all speak to what we are trying to do with Stroud's Run. Sometimes there's a fine line between vision and folly, and I know that council members have struggled with this for quite a long time. It has been before us for 7-8 months. It was tabled a part of that time. I know from speaking with individual council members how difficult that has been because people are divided on the issue. My feeling is that no, Stroud's Run is not a meat and potatoes part of our city. It is not an absolute necessity that we manage and own Stroud's Run. It is an extraordinary gift and opportunity for us to be something more than the average community. I thank everyone that has worked and given so much passion to this, and for all the deliberations and the contact from every person that has contacted me or talked to me or any of the other council members.
Thank you. Other council members wishing to speak?
Mr. President.
Yes, Member Sands.
I haven't spoken on this much to this point because I'm one of those council members Carol was talking about who was whirling around all these ideas. I've talked to and heard from citizens who think this is a great idea, citizens who think this is a great idea, but they're concerned about the cost of it. Not very many people that I've spoken to thought it was a bad idea. They think it's a great idea. How are we going to pay for it? Those questions, those two main questions of it's a good thing for us to do, it's a financial risk for us to do, have given me nightmares for weeks and months now. And in the last week, when I knew that we were going to vote, I needed to sort those out for myself. And I started with the booklet that we have and the income expense plan put together by Doug Franklin and his group. A gentleman who does deal with recreation at the university and who has a reputation for cogent, reliable fiscal planning. I also reflected on the mayor's support for this and his determination that the city can do this. I've been on council for 9 years. In those years, I think the mayor's been, I've thought, a very prudent financial manager and leader of the city. And in this instance, I trust him with regards to this particular issue. All that said, I think I've come down on the side of supporting this issue.
Other members of council wishing to speak? Member Weil.
Again, I'll probably vote against this. It's not that I'm totally against it. I like the idea. It sounds real great. At the same time, I do not anticipate it turning into a gas well farm or anything like that. I look at the structure of it, and it has been in decline. I don't think we can reverse decline without spending egregious amounts of money. And that's my concern really right off the bat. I look towards the future and say, I like it. I walk around there, I go out there. I don't know when last time all you members went out there. It's not my regular stomping grounds, but at the same time, I like its wildness and primitiveness. I don't know if we want to be able to maintain that, if we want to improve it, whether gun range is included or better facilities for food and et cetera. I'm not happy with the numbers I see. I think I would like to see more come from the state if we were going to make this deal and negotiate it. 50,000 for one time is not enough from my point of view. I don't know if we have the wherewithal to do it. I look at the circus that's going on with Lake Snowden right now. I look at, and this is one thing I really don't get into much, is I'm not really always happy with the managing of the recreation department. I don't lay into them because I'm not a recreation person. I did not vote for the community center. I know the council members have told me after the fact it was a pig in a poke. I've looked at the budget of that, and it's expanded quite a bit. I know the promises that were made at the time and not fulfilled. I'm concerned about the actual operation of this and whether the mission of the rec department actually can function taking this over. I'd rather see it go as a ballot for the population, for everybody. I'd rather see the more study done on it, not the rush. This is like a used car sales thing. You got to get it soon because the deal's going to die. It has all the aspects of that. So these are my concerns. I'm not going to try convincing everybody else not to vote on it because, as I say, I look at it and I think there's the basis of a good idea on this. I look at how much land we've acquired recently, though. I look at the comprehensive plan. We're going to expand in that direction, although the comprehensive plan as we expand towards Albany, I think, was the last version I read. I haven't read that section lately. So I'm not enamored with this rush to do it and the fuzzy numbers.
Other members of council? Member Phillips.
I have to start by saying this has been a really difficult decision. I have a huge amount of respect and appreciation for the people who've been working on this project, and many of them are friends of mine. So it's been really difficult to weigh all of the things that I'm hearing and considering about this. I care a lot about parks and recreation. I've used the park out at Stroud's Run. I've gone hiking there and swimming and canoeing and camping, and my family has enjoyed that park and do enjoy that park. Went to a birthday party there somewhat recently. And I'm really proud of the fact that the city of Athens has been doing such a great job with expanding our parks and the green space and the recreation opportunities that are available to people. I think the recent additions of Hawkwoods and the Coad property are really wonderful additions for the city, and the working toward getting that little waterfall area is really exciting and will be another addition to the Sells Park area that is really beautiful. And we've got a lot of people who've put time into working on trails and improving those and making that really a gem for people throughout the region. We also have the bike path. I think all of this kind of work demonstrate the caring and the values and the hard work that people put into making this a really special community. I have also spent a lot of time listening to people and reading the emails and talking with folks and meeting with folks, and followed up with some research of my own, talked with people at ODNR, talked with people I know at the State House to try to find out what may or may not be coming down the pike legislatively. And really, for me, it comes down to the fact that I don't think we're making a choice between having the park and not having the park for our community. And some of the folks who have expressed concern about this and really want us to do this, I think are promoting it in terms of, you know, we have to save the park. And I don't see that kind of immediately pending doom that I feel like people are concerned about. I don't see that happening. I have felt from the beginning that a park of this size would be more appropriately managed either by a regional park commission or by the state. I think they have resources that we don't have. They have natural resource professionals that really focus on these issues, and I feel like they are the appropriate entity to manage a park like this. I did talk with the gentleman at ODNR who had been down to talk with us here at council, and he expressed a willingness to work with groups who want to continue to improve the park, people who want to work on trails, people who want to eradicate invasive exotics. A lot of the concerns and issues that people have raised here, it seems to me that we can do those things. And that doesn't really boil down to who owns the park, that those kind of partnerships can be further developed so that people can contribute to helping improve the park. I also, with the things that have been going on around Lake Snowden, one of the concerns that was expressed to me is this idea that if the city owned the park, then we could deed restrict it to protect it from the resource extraction possibilities. But with the things that are going on at Lake Snowden, it looks like that may not necessarily be a stronger form of protection than, you know, state ownership and what exists in state law. I just don't know that it boils down to saving the park or not saving the park. And I continue to be concerned about our financial capacity to manage the park. I think that it is possible to do fundraising and to figure out ways to make money for the park to be able to cover its own costs, but I don't really see a clear plan of how that's going to work. I have a lot of concern about whether the budget that's been drawn up and attached to this proposal is realistic. And the way that plays out, I think that we would have the money to do this right now, but I'm concerned about the impact in terms of our priorities and the impact on other city services, because we already hear from citizen groups on a regular basis about the fact that neighborhood concerns are not addressed, that people are concerned about code enforcement. They're concerned about whether we have adequate police forces to be able to actually go out and patrol in neighborhoods and respond to issues that come up in neighborhoods when there's so much attention on the uptown area. And there are a lot of ways that it feels to me that our resources are already stretched thin, and I'm concerned about overextending and what that may do in terms of other really core functions of city government. So I love the parks that we have, and I love Stroud's Run, but I just don't feel confident that we have the financial capacity or the professional expertise to manage the park appropriately.
Are there any other members of council wishing to speak before the community?
I'd like to add a few more things. First of all, thank you everybody for talking to me, both sides of the thing. I've had people who, as Debbie pointed out, feel that city services are lacking and that we're spending money in the wrong place. I've had other people who are saying, you know, this is something for the future and we should be looking at it. And I will bring up a point. 10 years ago, I was out in the audience too, and actually on a field trip for where University of States now sits, why the city council at that time was looking at saving that for a wellhead protection area and thought the cost was too much. So I'm cognizant of making bad mistakes, very bad mistakes at times, and I'm capable of it too. But at the same time, I do listen to the people who are saying the garbage isn't being dealt with. I've got a series of people emailing me graffiti notices. We've got bike safety issues I hear about, and other noise complaints. And these are the things, again, as bread and butter core issues I look at as something I have to deal with as well. And again, I'm not sure how it would be lost if we don't take this over. I don't see it being turned into something different. I see a slow decline, yes, and this could be addressed in the future, I suspect. But I'm not willing to take it on right now as a city council member.
Are there any other members of council who haven't spoken that wish to speak before we go to the audience?
At this time, or will we speak later?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone from the audience that wishes to address council, please come forward. Mr. Traxler, if you could state your name and your address, please.
My name is Tim Traxler, and I live on Hooper Ridge Road in Millfield, Ohio. Thanks for this opportunity to speak. I know that the City Council received an email in a letter form from Tom O'Grady and I. I know you've had a chance to read that. It also appeared in the Athens News today for the member of the audience. I'd like to submit that for the record. Also, I wanted to say that I have lived in this community for about 40 years, and I come to you today as a citizen of the state of Ohio, not of our community. This is a park that's owned by all of the citizens of this state, and I don't think that there are very many citizens of this state that know that this is up for grabs to a local community. As someone who travels and stays in state parks, I think that people count on the state parks being there. I asked Carol last week or two ago about would this park still be on the state map. I doubt that it would. And therefore, people in future generations would not have knowledge that this is a state park open to the public and so on. It would essentially be almost a private park for the city of Athens. In lieu of that, I don't think it's fair to the citizens of Ohio for this little community to make a deal with ODNR or whatever because of their failures to give this park away. So I'm concerned about it as a property that belongs to the citizens of the state. And as far as the partnerships of people who are interested, I don't see any reason why they couldn't be offered up to the state. In fact, maybe that's what the state really needs, is people from the local community, being involved in taking care of that state park and demanding that people take better care, that the state does take better care of it. I think it's a matter of priorities, and if we're not a squeaky wheel here in the Athens community, then the state park is probably going to decline. So I think it's a failure of our community not to address the concerns that we have about the state park. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Traxler. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Daniel Hudson. I live at 30 Far Hills Drive. I've been a resident of Athens since 1979. I believe that this is an amazing opportunity for the city of Athens, and I urge you to vote for local control of Stroud's Run. I and my family have spent many wonderful hours in the Stroud's Run area over the last 25 years. Some people have called this a gem, and I believe it is. The trail that runs from Sells Park to Stroud's Run is as nice as any trail in the entire state of Ohio and in the many national parks that I visit often. While there are many unknowns, many risks in taking over this park, there are also many unknowns and risks if we do not. We have two great resources in this area. One is education, and the other is our natural hills and trees. People are flocking to our hawk-hawking bike path and to the beauty that we have in this part of our state. I have heard many reasonable ways to increase the revenues generated within Stroud's, and don't forget about the increased tourism dollars. We have the the expertise right here in our area to draw up a use plan and to implement it. Athens started curbside recycling years ago, years ahead of anyone else. Here is another example how we can show the rest of the state how to do it. Countless people have already volunteered and work in the Strouds area, and I believe that that number will greatly increase with local control. Please vote to give control to this very special and valuable resource to the city of Athens. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Please, Greg. Margaret, why don't you come and sit at the table? That chair is going unused. You're welcome to sit up here.
Good evening, my name is Greg Broadhurst. I'm also a seasonal ranger with the National Park Service. I've just gotten back about 8 weeks ago. I've been interested in this project for quite a long time, in that the state has not put any funds or resources into the management of the park as required by the Ohio Revised Code for many years. I also have to address the issue that somebody had brought forth, that there was a concern that this was a devolution of state land to a municipal entity. And I have had and had those issues originally, but historically, as I spoke to the city council before, there have been cases where state land has been, I wouldn't say devolved, has been deeded to park districts, and then particularly the park district I'm referring to, the Akron and Cleveland Metro Park, Dayton and Cleveland Metro Park systems actually eventually deeded their lands to the National Park Service. This is now Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So there's already historical precedent for that, which is for the public benefit and for everyone. I just want to make that point. I'm not sure if everyone got the emails that I sent out this afternoon. I tried to get it to everyone and had a copy through Debbie Walker. If not, I'll give you a copy before I get off. I came off the podium here. But concerning issues of adequate funding, I'm reiterating this. There exist numerous resources for funding both in state and federal natural resource agencies. There are 12 pages of funding resources available to this city on the ODNR website, Ohio Department of Natural Resources. That's just the state and federal programs. That's not in addition to help and assistance from Trust for Public Land, from Nature Conservancy, and other organizations which have bounteous amounts of funding through foundations. Another issue I'd like to address, which hasn't been talked about, is resource management issues. Funding is also available for a resource manager, which provides for a 6-year declining grant to employ a watershed coordinator for an initial salary of $40,000. That's just a position. That's not the project. So there are resources out there, and that's what I'm making a point of. Possible implications of non-adoption of this ordinance. There exists in the present, in the Ohio General Assembly, in the Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee, Senate Bill 126, which is an effort to facilitate the lease of oil, gas, and timber leasing to all state on all state lands, and that's still on the table. Secretary of State Blackwell recently was quoted in the media as saying that he supports extractive activities in state parks and forest lands and would promote the initiative should he be elected to the governorship. I'm just offering some other scenarios here. And I'll put this into the record for the rest of City Council. Are anybody any questions from City Council?
I have a question. This Senate Bill 126, when it says all state lands, does that include campuses?
That includes,
Anywhere, any state land?
okay, all state lands, and I don't, it's codified. Yeah, you can find it at the,
I just want to find out, that's
yeah,
all. Okay.
all state lands.
I'll check it out.
Subject to nomination by timber, oil, and gas interests.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Broadhurst. Who else would like to speak to this issue? Mr. Seeley.
My name's Gary Seeley. I live at 35 Roxbury Drive in Athens. I don't think I'm going to really be able to add anything to the debate. that you probably haven't already heard, but I'm going to say something anyhow. I think this is a worthy project in a lot of senses. I know a lot of people put a lot of work into it. I'm pretty passionate about it. I just think it outstrips our capabilities. I think if we have funds available for investment in that we should look at investing it in what we already have. I'd rather have a bracelet with one diamond on it than a bracelet with 10 rhinestones on it. So I would like to see the investment done in our beautiful park system that we already have, which frankly needs some attention. I guess the old adage is that even a free horse eats a lot of hay. And this horse will eat hay for a long, long time, and I think ultimately it'll be more than what we want to bear the cost of. I would like to see us turn down this wonderful opportunity that the state wants to foist on us and absolve themselves of the responsibilities to their citizens. I think that might be the avenue that we should be looking at and the approach we should be taking and holding our state officials to their responsibilities instead of trying to put more on a small city like ours. And you know, the expectations will be pretty high from citizens for it to be a real gem. I don't know that we'll be able to take care of it the way it needs to be taken care of. Obviously, the state's not doing it. So I'm pretty critical of that. I'm not critical of anybody that wants to do this. I'm not critical of anybody that thinks it's a great idea or that we have the capability of doing it. I just, from a pragmatic standpoint, I don't think we really want to be able to do that down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Sumney.
My name is Robert Sumney. I live at 20 Briarwood Drive, Athens, and I've lived in Athens for nearly 33 years. I am requesting that the Athens City Council reject authorizing an agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Parks and Recreation for management of Stroud's Run. Stroud's Run is either a gift or a Pandora's box. If council were a bank loan officer being offered this vague Stroud's financial plan, would they accept it? Hope can be found in great abundance, but a concrete plan regarding Stroud's is lacking. It concerns me that even some advocates of Stroud's takeover have suggested that the city doesn't know what it's getting into and lacks genuine expertise in managing the park, a sentiment shared by many of the Athens County Commissioners. Guilford Park, which was cited in the Stroud's Run economic feasibility study, a park near Lisbon, Ohio, comparable to Stroud's Run, forecasted a loss of nearly $400,000 for the year 2005. Authorizing this agreement has a real possibility of placing a future financial strain on the city of Athens, as well as decimating the quality of life within Athens by stretching city services. A bare-bones budget has been proposed, but we don't know what the real cost will be. Is $99,000 a year a budget realistic, or is it wishful thinking? The bare bones partnerships. The only substantial Stroud's partnership with the city of Athens is Ohio University. That will be removed after a few years. Advocates of Stroud's have not sufficiently demonstrated that Stroud's can cover its operational costs without eventually asking a handful of full-time Athens taxpayers to pony up more money through increased income tax, property tax, etc. Stroud's Run is beyond the normal recreation obligations of Athens, and as such, it does need to cover its costs. We talked about the idea in the past of taking care of what we own, and I would ask the council to reflect on some of the things that other council members have already brought up, the various needs that are still necessary to fulfill within the city of Athens regarding the quality of life. To my knowledge, for instance, there is no programs available currently from the Recreation Department for developmentally challenged individuals. These are things that need to be taken care of first. So I would ask you please to reject this authorization and be able to focus on things that are already taking place in Athens that, again, we can improve in terms of the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumney. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Maffei, and I live on Canterbury Drive here in Athens. I just want to make sure tonight that the City Council understands, I think it's very important that the Stroud's Run natural area stays as natural as possible. I know we have no crystal ball to look into the future, and as somebody pointed out a few moments ago, there's state legislation in Columbus talking about development of state lands for natural gas and natural resource developments along those lines. What I'm very concerned about is, and I don't know, I can't say if the city would do a better job of protecting the land or not. I know that the city has done a good job acquiring parkland recently, but I also know that there's been some questionable, in my mind, decisions about the way, privatizing public lands in recent years as well. So to my way of thinking, what is it going to be? Is the state of Ohio going to take better care of that land and make sure it stays pristine and in the state it's in right now, or will the city of Athens do it? I'd like to think that local control offers a better opportunity to do that. The closer we are to the decision making here on here at City Council, I think that we have a better chance to keep it the land as pristine as possible. But I think that we also have to ask the City Council, if you do decide to acquire this land, how are you going to make sure that it stays in the present condition is right now, so it is a park, it doesn't turn into a senior citizen housing development, doesn't become a Lake Snowden kind of situation. I think that's also coloring this whole debate. I think a lot of us, people I've talked to, are saying that is something that's in the back of my mind. Will this turn out to be something along the lines of Lake Snowden? So we have to, I guess I'm not offering a definitive yes or no on this, but I want to make sure that I know who is going to do the best job of protecting Stroud's Run and keeping this beautiful park as pristine as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no other comments? Any other comments from council members? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5906, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The ordinance fails. Ordinance 10406, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a utility easement with the Hocking Valley Bank. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 10406. This ordinance does exactly what it says. It authorizes a utility easement for Hocking Valley Bank that goes across Palmer there.
Other comments?
I understand this has already been done?
Yes, the
Okay.
utilities are already there, the road's been put back together. We're just authorizing the easement for it to exist there.
Okay.
Any others? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10406?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 10506, an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations for property located at 78 and 80 Hudson Avenue to allow a minor lot split. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 10506.
Second.
This ordinance is referring to a lot that currently has two primary structures on it, and this lot split will create two separate lots, one for each structure. It does require variances for the lot width and the side building setbacks. But they're pretty much in keeping with the lots in the neighborhood, and this recommendation comes to us from the Planning Commission.
Further discussion. Member Bain.
This is in your neighborhood, Debbie. Can you refresh me who the owner of this lot is?
Jennifer DeMaria?
Okay.
Who was it? Jennifer DeMaria?
Further discussion. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10506?
Aye.
Those opposed, the ordinance has been adopted. Let the record show that at this point, Member Patterson needed to leave. Ordinance 10606, an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations to Stephen Abdella for property located outside the corporate limit, but within the 3-mile jurisdiction to allow a minor lot split. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O-10606.
Second.
This ordinance is regarding property in the plains that will allow a minor lot split. This recommendation comes from the Planning Commission, and it will, I'm trying to look here at what the variance request is.
I think it has to do with the shape of the lot as well as the frontage, if my memory's correct on it.
Right. I think the issue was he had planned to just allow a right-of-way across the lot that would be in front, and the Planning Commission recommended that they actually split the lot so that there's permanent access
Rather
to
than
that
easement.
rear part of the property.
Okay.
Further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10606? Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10706, an ordinance repealing ordinance 02606 to extend the tax abatement program in the community reinvestment area for a period of 5 years. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O-10706.
Second.
This refers to the tax abatement program in the uptown area where community design could oversee renovations that were done, and the tax abatement was for the difference in the property value based on the improvements that were made. It was a very small tax abatement program, but we've been informed that we were only authorized to renew it twice, and we shouldn't have done so a third time, so we need to repeal it.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10706?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 10906, an ordinance to rezone the landmark properties on Kurt Street from an M zone to an R3 zone. Member Phillips.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O-10906.
Second.
This, again, comes to us from the Planning Commission. It's the area where the former landmark property was located, and this will bring it more into keeping with the other uses in the immediate neighborhood.
I have a question. This gets to a question that one of the public asked. Is R3, does that allow for commercial?
Yes.
Yes. It doesn't mandate it. It allows for commercial on the bottom floor or something? R3.
Wait a second. Okay.
Is this,
Again, this is the actual plat of this area is actually the landmark area, not the Bob's area. If you look at the map
It's a business.
here.
right.
Okay, this is
All right,
from,
so this is only, then the landmark spot
Correct.
would only be residential?
So
Yes.
the Bob's location would still be the B3.
B3,
B3.
and therefore they'd still be putting, if they choose to, put grocery store in there, or whatever they choose.
In Bob's, but not in the landmark area?
Mhm. Landmark would not be landmark anymore. It would be
Right,
residential.
right, okay, okay.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 10906?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
One,
One. The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 11106, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 11106.
Second.
This is appropriation ordinance that deals with three fairly large items. The first one is appropriating from the Tourism Fund $14,400. This is money to be spent at Halloween. Approximately half of that would be used for payment of auxiliary officers. In the past, we've done that all volunteer. We are looking at being more selective about those officers, and therefore we'd pay them. And another part of it goes to paying mounted expenses and other expenses for Halloween. There's another part of $47,000 and $18,700 from the parking enforcement fund. These two are doing two different things. One, the mayor has suggested that since we need to replace a certain number of our wind-up meters, why don't we go ahead and replace them all, because the parts that we need are no longer readily available, and so we can replace them all with the digital ones for about $18,000. The other part is a piece of good news. We have contracted with a collection agency to follow up on our parking ordinances which are delinquent, our parking tickets which are delinquent in payment. And in order for them to do that, they get a percentage of what they collect. They have already collected more than we had budgeted for, so we are not only getting more money in, but we have to appropriate some money to make those additional payments. But that outlay is the result of money coming in. So those three things are happening in that ordinance.
Further discussion, Member Bain.
Mr. Sands, good news for whom? On the
Good news
parking-
for the city's general fund.
I know, I was joking, but my real question is, what about, and I'm really in favor of this because it allowed us to put that police officer on, so I was just being a little jokey there. But my real question is, could you clarify for me, we already have appropriated some money for Halloween, so we've added to it, or is
We've
that the
added-
total amount? That's all I was just asking.
That's in addition to what's already
Already there.
appropriated, and that should cover everything. And we're putting all that in the tourism fund, hopefully, again, as a way of being able to track where the expenses are.
Okay. So we're spending more than the amount that you mentioned, because there's some already
Yes,
appropriated?
there's more than 14,000, there's already some there that
That was
was
my-
in the budget. Yes.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 11106?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 11906, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 3 Administrative, Chapter 3.10 Alarm Systems. Member Bain.
Mr. President, move adoption of 01-1906.
Second.
01-1906 is an effort on our part to solve the ever-present fire alarm problem that we've had and has been referred to for at least 20 years that I know of. And last summer, Teresa Carter, Debbie Walker, and the two chiefs came together in various forms and talked about how to do this. And we now have, in 11906, a proposal that will eliminate the base charge for fire alarms, but will put the charge on where the charge needs to be levied on those people who are not taking care of their alarms. And we avoid the pitfall of making too draconian a measure that will make people not use their alarms. We're putting the chiefs in charge so they tell us who to charge at that point in time. And I trust that this will eliminate some of the static we've heard on it, because it has been an unending problem, this balance between use the alarm when it's needed, do not use it, but also don't burden our safety forces with false alarms. So somewhere between there, we're going to find equilibrium. And so, once again, we're going to eliminate the base charge, but we're going to have increased fine for people that go beyond a couple false alarms.
Further discussion on ordinance 11906? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 11406, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 7, Traffic Code, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 11706, an ordinance accepting the petitions for annexation of approximately 13.341 acres owned by SJB Development, Inc., Hampton Inn site located on East State Street. Ordinance 11806, an ordinance designating the Hampton Inn annexation area located on East State Street a B3 zone. Ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 12006, an ordinance authorizing funds for engineering and inspection of a water pump station for the Columbus Road Water Project, number 219, and declaring an emergency. Member Bain.
Mr. President, 0120, 0121, 0122 are part of a larger program that was put together by the administration. The unhappy circumstance was that we had a major flood that adversely affected our sewer lines that went into a pump station. And so the movement of those lines was called for. The engineering was done. We also moved to do water at the same time. Luckily for us, the administration has secured grant funds for some parts of this from the Appalachian Regional Commission. And so I'm basically going to cover everything all at once, but we have these 3 ordinances that continue on the process of getting this work done. And next time, I would like to suspend the rules on 12106 on the engineering work. At least that's my understanding of what we have to do at this point in time. At this point, I would also like to thank Mr. Lambert, Scott Lambert, for helping with securing the FEMA money. Last time I was pretty lavish in my praise for Andy, and Nick pointed out, I mean, not Nick, but Ray pointed out to me that while Andy was serving us in Iraq, Scott Lambert did all the grunt work in the field and met numerous times and secured the $3 out of $4 for the flood damage for this, something that we should be very grateful for as well. So thank you, Scott Lambert.
Further discussion? Ordinance 12106, an ordinance amending Ordinance 010305, authorizing engineering and inspections of a gravity sewer lift station and force main for the Columbus Road Sewer Project number 218, and declaring an emergency. Again, Member Bain.
Oh, I've already covered it.
Same thing.
Keep rolling.
Any other comments? Ordinance 12206, an ordinance amending Ordinance 06506, authorizing construction of a gravity sewer lift station and force main for the Columbus Road Sewer Project number 218. Again, still covered? No.
I think it's covered except for one thing. We did have an increase in the cost, and some of the cost increase came in 2 parts. One part was the contingency fund, which we always want in a project of this magnitude. So if something goes wrong, opportunity arises, disaster befalls us, we have money to cover it without having to bring council in on it. The second thing is that our bids exceeded the estimate, and that's why it's slightly more than it was before. You asked me last time, that's the answer I got. Okay?
Member Weil.
And just for the record, this is $1,030,500.
Right. And if it were $4.50, you'd all be arguing with me.
Well, wait a second. Yeah, okay.
All right.
That is so true. Is there further discussion on ordinance 12206?
Just,
Member Sands.
I'm just going to reiterate what Councilmember Bain was pointing out before, that with the work of our people in the city, we've acquired funding. That $1 million, how much is the city going to put in?
One-fourth of the total.
One-fourth? Right. So
Roughly.
we're getting a huge project done for a fraction of the cost.
Luckily for us, we had FEMA.
Yeah. And luckily for us, we had the people who knew how to approach
Absolutely,
them.
yes. But otherwise, we would have had to do it anyway, so thank God.
And it's not like there's an option here for, I remember, probably been how long ago, Mayor Abel, Wayne Key, and I walked through the woods and looked at where sewage, raw sewage, was ready to go into the river. Fortunately, this takes care of that. Member Weil.
It beats all of us with buckets trying to service everybody.
Amen.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Ordinance 12306, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance. Member Sands.
Mr. President, we talked about this ordinance in committee last week. This is a request from the municipal court. They have a grant called the Underage Drinkers Fund Grant, and they're asking to transfer some money within those grant funds, $2,500 from their capital equipment expenditures line, and they'd like to move that into their line 5110, which is their personnel expenses line, their salary. So they're just asking for a transfer of funds within that grant.
Other comments? Announcements and other business. Committee meetings for next time? Member Weil.
I think we're having a road trip next week, right?
Yes, at 5 o'clock, please.
Okay. 5 o'clock road trip. Anyone that would like to accompany council down to the west
On the
end to
money
look at a parking issue?
And some other things too we'll pick up on. The mural.
Oh,
Yes.
Just graffiti in general on the west side.
Graffiti.
Tour of Ward
Yes,
1.
and some other, we'll look at some other things as well, but we'll be back by 7. Will we have a meeting? And the other question I have, since it's something I brought up, I would like to know, should we have a meeting of council and read any of these other ordinances, or is that not necessary? Can we wait till November? Because I'd like to have the 30th off. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I already have plans. I won't be here if we have a meeting.
okay. Well, what is
I can't be here if we have a meeting.
So it's the 5th Monday, and so if there's any desire on the
I
part.
thought the rules were we don't meet on the 5th Monday.
Yes, unless we decide.
Unless we want to.
Unless we want. I do not want to.
Anybody wants to put anything on the agenda for afterwards, go right ahead. Feel free with Debbie, okay?
The rules are that council meets on the first and the third Mondays.
Right.
On the 2 times a year that we have a fifth, we do what we choose. Did you wish to?
I just want a council or a committee meeting next week.
Okay.
Transportation.
Yeah, transportation for handicap spaces, Stewart Street, and bicycle safety enforcement.
Okay, any other committee meetings while we're on that?
Planning and Development and City Services together on the item that the mayor brought up, and also probably on, since there's overlap on the Central Avenue thing, to resolve that, which is what we're going to see.
Okay. I've been handed a clerk, handed by the clerk, a notice of public hearing. Athens City Council will hold a public hearing 7 p.m. Monday, November 6th, in the council chambers on the 3rd floor of City Building. This hearing is to consider a recommendation by the Planning Commission to zone the Hampton Inn annexation area on East State Street as a B3 zone. Interested parties are invited to attend and express their opinions. And my guess is it'll be another 4-minute meeting like today's was. Opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that we have not covered on tonight's agenda. Seeing none and having addressed all items on our agenda, we stand adjourned.